Everybody. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started with our program tonight. I'm super excited. So welcome everybody to the Reach Worldwide Virtual Town Hall, a night of education, sponsored by CVS Health. I am Faith Shamley, founder and executive director of Reach Worldwide, and our vision is to see young people around the globe experience and be transformed by God beyond the four walls of church and in the most influential areas of culture. And our mission is to be a light to the emerging generations through kingdom meeting culture and arts and entertainment, media, ministry, technology, and education. So I am super excited about our partnership with CVS Health in sponsoring this virtual town hall to discuss COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy, especially among young adults. Solid COVID-19 vaccine education is personally important to me because I have a grandmother that lives in the same house as me, as well as other high-risk relatives. And I actually made the decision to get the COVID-19 vaccine for not only my protection, but their protection as well. So this is super, super important to me. After this event, remember, you can go to your local CVS pharmacy to find out more information about the COVID-19 vaccine. And so we can go ahead and get into our program for this evening. I'm so excited to introduce our first guest for the evening, Hannah Naomi Jones. And I'm gonna just read a little bit about who Hannah is, okay? So Hannah Naomi Jones is an unapologetic Black womanpreneur, social impact strategist, influencer, architect of ideas, creative storyteller, and mother of two who leads from her narrative and tenaciously dreams big. She is the creator of Lead With Me, a movement to empower and mobilize people to walk in their purpose and lead unapologetically. She is a mentor, teacher, and advocate at heart. She is known as a dynamic speaker and has presented at conferences, leading countless workshops, classes around equity, access, leadership, advocacy, and we are happy to have Hannah with us today to share her story as a young woman who had COVID-19. So welcome, Hannah.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Faith. Much appreciated. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited. You look amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. And that's part of the testimony.
Yes.
That's part of the testimony.
I love that. Yes. So speaking of your testimony, that actually leads into my first question that I have for you. We know that there have been and still are various ways in which COVID-19 has impacted individuals. So can you share with us your personal experience and your story regarding COVID-19?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Again, thank you for having me. The entire landscape of the world, of our country, our communities have been shaped by COVID-19 in so many ways. And I think we're still processing a lot from it as we are not necessarily completely through the pandemic. And I guess for me personally, I'm going to share my story, but it intersects with so many people's story due to my profession and my life. I'll be really brief. I actually landed in the DMV. I was offered an opportunity to focus on communication, marketing, and impact in the DMV at one of the largest AME churches in Maryland. By way of California. And as soon as I got there, by February, we were meeting with Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. We were meeting with the FCC and learning about regulations. We were meeting with all kinds of folks in the DMV in February. By March, I was seeing some language because I'm from California and the pandemic hit the West Coast first, actually, before we really begin to shut down. And I begin to see communications, business continuity plans about how social distancing and seeing the word social distancing and shutting down. On March 8th, I was helping to train some volunteers for after school program that we were launching. By the 12th, we spent 8 hours writing a complete shutdown plan. It was so surreal. By that night, we voted and I'm talking about 8 to 10,000 plus membership, we voted to shut a church down for the first time. And I was responsible for helping to write what that looked like. I remember it being about 2 days of just a pause. And before you know it, we all realized we can't just sit here, the community. Before you know it, you're seeing that students, many of their only meals are, they were having their only meal at school and lunchtime. So we were feeding the community there and doing that work. We had been doing a lot of community work, I would say March, all the way. We made it through the summer, partnerships and so on, our WMS. It was great. My job was to tell the story. I was out there, I was with the cameras. It was great, keep the Sunday service going. And in October and September, our entire household, including the leadership of the church, got COVID. I came out to the DMV with the pastor. And it's public knowledge, and we all got COVID. We had one death, and I was sick and in the hospital. It was that experience in the hospital that really shaped and transformed my life. On my way to the hospital, the senior, or the matriarch of the family in the house, was not ill. We lost her while I was in the hospital. And I remember I remember just everything being so surreal when you go into the ER, and for me, immediately I said, I don't want to get anybody else sick. So even that fear of, how do you go seek help without, getting anyone else sick? Because everything we touch, from getting in the car to going to check in at the ER, you can get someone sick, and you realize you're ill at that point as well. And so even dealing with that fear of how do I even get to the hospital without impacting anybody negatively or yet making them sick? And I remember getting finally back to the ER, and they just continued to say I was getting worse. And the real point I want to get to is, I remember them offering me something that hadn't been approved, a drug yet, a steroid. And I remember asking, focused on health equity, I said, how many Black women have taken this before I sign my life away? Who knows? Yep. And that fear of that. I'm 37 years old. I do have 2 children. I've led young adult ministries and did different things with young adults. And I remember thinking, how did I get this sick? This is just something that doesn't happen to me. And I said okay to the drug. And that night they said, we're going to take you to the ICU in the morning and intubate you. And I remember laying there saying, you've done enough. If you close your eyes today, it's okay. Your kids are going to be okay. It was tough. I also said, God, if I lived through this, you won't regret it. And I felt like I was in the eye of the storm. And I actually went to bed in great peace.
Wow.
I did a lot of community work. I worked at UCI, coming from there, University of California, Irvine, leading retention, and a lot of work in the community. And I said, I had to think, it's okay, you've done enough. You've done enough. And the next morning, the doctor came in and said, your oxygen level has improved in a way that we didn't expect.
Wow.
They said I turned the corner through the night. And when they said I was holding down food and well enough to go home, I finally went home a couple of days later. And from there, it was tough. They said I would probably be a long hauler, had pneumonia. I had a mini stroke. My right hand shook just like this. And my mind was cloudy. Now I was worried. I'm not gonna lie. I said, my brain is my money. I'm a methodologist, I'm a strategist. People come to me with problems I met, and I could not think. I couldn't write. And I was so still. And it was in that time where I had to be still that I penned a letter to Dr. Anthony Fauci. And I said, how are we going to get through this? I said, I don't want anyone else to be sick like this. I don't want my kids, my mother. I began to worry as I would do breathing treatments. And it took a couple of days, wrote a letter to Dr. Fauci and invited him to come and do a virtual program, because I had basically learned how to do virtual programs and held us down through the church activities were all virtual. And I invited him to do a virtual program about the Black community, leading us through and out of the pandemic. He responded, his team, and said, let's go.
Wow.
So Anthony Fauci was coming. And I said at that point, I survived for a reason. And I hit the ground running. I defied the odds. They said I wouldn't be better till March. By December, we were up and going. My hands stopped shaking. I said, they really don't have a lot of science behind it. So at this point, post hospitalization, they're going to keep writing you just comfort prescriptions. I said, I don't want any pain medicine. And I just started walking slowly but surely, got myself off of breathing treatments and all that stuff. And then we went, before Dr. Fauci even came, we went to finally take the older folks in the household to get their vaccines. And we met with the president of the hospital and talked about, honestly, how there were a lot of white folks in line in this Black hospital to get vaccinated. We were really concerned. And so out of that came a partnership with Luminous Health to pretty much create the very first faith-based vaccine clinic in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
The clinic, it was overnight. We did a big press conference and I was writing a press release and we were going to kind of say how the vaccines have to come from the state. The governor finds out, they send the lieutenant governor and they end up giving 5,000 plus vaccines to us.
Wow.
And they have a press conference and it was great. So really, I was energized. I said, I flew through the eye of the storm and I was really energized to continue this work. We have now vaccinated over 20,000 people in Prince George's County, which is about over 60% African-American population. And we continue to do that work and other work as well. So I'm sharing my story. One, young folks can get sick. I think that's still something that's out there that we still are acting like doesn't happen. I like how when you opened up, you simply said, hey, I want to protect others. And I think we're not realizing we're the highest travelers, we're the highest partiers, we're the highest daters, and some of us have families like children. Right. I did this for my children as well. And so that's just really about the impact, what's happened, and my recommendations, right, to protect our community. I think it really is our duty for the self-preservation of our community, for young folks to lead the way in making sure that we are vaccinated. It's crucial.
Wow. I am floored by your story and so inspired. And I thank God that you survived and that you kept the promise that you made to him and you hit the ground running as soon as you could. And so and it's also just so encouraging to see an African-American woman who has made such an impact in the work of the COVID-19 vaccine. I mean, 20,000 individuals, that is a lot. We see the numbers on the news reports of how many Americans are vaccinated. And that's a huge. And
I want to be clear. I am the storyteller and a methodology person. It was, besides the paid healthcare staff by Luminous, Reed Temple is where the church is, and it is so many volunteers that this a director who's a healthcare director. These folks did the work. My job was to tell the story, help to facilitate and negotiate any partnerships and methodologies and how we're doing things, registrations, websites open. I mean, we had so much going on. So I just have to make sure that I uplift everybody who put their time in and put their life on the line to show up 4 days a week from February to, we just closed the vaccine clinic now. So my hat's off to them.
Wow. Yes. It takes a village.
Yes.
It really does. It really does.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So as we close out, do you have any staggering data and facts, plus any recommendations that you have for our community and our generation in particular?
Right. So I want to educate through narrative-based education. The facts are constantly changing, but the story is so important to really help to shape policy and with data. I think one of the things, I lost my uncle to COVID. I lost my aunt. I lost several people. My uncle was actually homeless in LA. And I remember when clinics started popping up and they said they're drive-through and you have to have your ID. And I said, well, what about the people who can't drive through? And what about these things? So one of my recommendations is say this night of education does inspire you, if you're not vaccinated, to go get vaccinated and you're ashamed, or you're having access issues. Health inequity is still real for the Black community. Speak up. And to those who have influence, learn how to mobilize and organize to get what we need. And that's all it was. We talked to to a hospital president. She had the influence, we had the influence, and we made sure that this was happening. Anybody can do this. This night that you're doing, Faith, at your age, with your voice and your platform, is proof that you do not need permission for social good and for social change. So I do recommend that we mobilize and organize to continue to fight for health equity as we go through vaccinations. I also ask that we speak up when there is a need, because we cannot meet the need if we do not know the need, and do not be ashamed. I actually did not go to the hospital right away because I was ashamed of getting COVID. I think that is something, and vomiting is one of the signs that you're really sick at some points, and you could literally die, right? Because you're ashamed. We don't want that. My uncle died because he didn't know how to seek help and get tested with no identification. He left voicemails on his sister's phone, my aunt, and said, "Shell, I can't find my ID. I'm trying to see if I'm sick." And it was really sad, right? And so those are my two recommendations, the ones who are in need, as well as creating the solutions if you have the influence. Also, Black people are still very much under vaccinated nationwide. We may see those numbers higher in more affluent Black communities, but the South and some parts of the DMV are very privileged to have affluent communities. I'm from California, and we may have Black communities, but that doesn't mean they're affluent, right? Which means we don't have access in the same way. So that national number is different. I also think we should continue to mask up and are protecting our children. My children are trying to get back to normal and join sports and started sports, and they've had one vaccination shot. Making that choice about your family and what they can go back to. And I give them, briefing your kids, hey, when you're not outside and doing your track, I need you, when you go into the gym, use the same rules, your safety guidelines, wash your hands, wear your mask. It's not our school's responsibility to always educate and inform our children as they return. Make sure we do that as parents as well. And remember, this is still new. So don't depend so much on education institutions or jobs to create all the rules and we abide by them. If something doesn't feel right, if it's not right with your gut, it doesn't work, say something so that it can be reshaped for and meet the need and meet us where we are.
Wow, I love that. I love those recommendations. So powerful. It's kind of like, we have the power and we have the control over our lives and what we choose to do, to protect ourselves and those around us. So I love that. So yes, thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this
I'm rooting for you, and I'm following you, and I'm gonna continue to tell the world as I tell stories about you. So thank you for your work.
Yes, thank you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everyone, that was amazing. I am overwhelmed already by how amazing this event has been so far. And so before we transition into our next guest, I want to share a reminder that you can go to your local CVS pharmacy and find out more information about the COVID-19 vaccine. And in addition, our guest speaker will be answering questions about COVID-19, the COVID-19 vaccine at the end of this presentation. So please, if you have any questions, just go into the chat here on Zoom and ask away. All right, so as mentioned earlier, there's a lot of misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccine, a lot of conspiracy theories. And so I'm super excited to introduce our speaker for the night. You'll be able to tell from his bio that he is an industry expert and deeply cares about minority communities as well. All right, so Dr. Joseph Bettencourt, MD, MPH, is the Senior Vice President, Equity Community Health of Massachusetts General Hospital, the founder, senior advisor, and faculty of the Disparity Solutions Center at MGH, faculty at the Mongan Institute, and associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, and a practicing internal medicine physician. He has also served on the leadership team of the MGH Center for Diversity and Inclusion. Dr. Bettencourt is a nationally and internationally recognized expert in health policy, healthcare disparities, diversity, and cross-cultural medicine, and has served on several Institute of Medicine committees, including those that produce the landmark reports on equal treatment and increasing diversity in the healthcare workforce. Dr. Bettencourt has secured grants and contracts that have led to over 60 peer-reviewed publications and advises private industry, government, and not-for-profit health systems on approaches to eliminating racial and ethnic disparities in healthcare. He sits on the board of Trinity Health, a large national health system, and sat on the Boston Board of Health and the board of Neighborhood Health Plan in Boston. He is a 2015 Aspen Institute Health Innovator Fellow. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome on Dr. Joseph Bettencourt.
Great. Thank you so much, Faith. Boy, what a privilege to be part of this group, and really excited to answer any questions people may have about where we are, where we need to go, and certainly about the vaccine. And I'm really reflecting a lot. Hannah's testimony is so powerful. Having been, one of the doctors who worked during the surge, you see so much pain, Faith, so much suffering. And I would just say that, at the time, I got COVID myself in November. Thank God I was fortunate enough. I just had some low-level flu-like symptoms. Hannah's story is really sad. I've seen a lot of young people, pass. So this hurts, and it hurts especially if you really care about our communities. And I'm originally from Puerto Rico, grew up in New York City, grew up in Puerto Rico. I've dedicated my career to really raising up and lifting up the voices of our vulnerable communities and acknowledging their resilience and their strength, but also with the clear understanding that in this country, we have very significant health disparities. We know that if we look at our nation's largest killers like diabetes, HIV/AIDS, cardiovascular disease, cancer, they disproportionately impact communities of color. So my life's work is really about figuring out ways in which we can improve community health, in which we can make sure anybody who enters our doors in the healthcare system gets the best we have to offer, no matter who they are, where they're from. And so this last year and change has been what I'd like to say, the best of times and worst of times. It's the worst of times for all the reasons we know, the devastation in our communities, which I'll tell you, Faith, we predicted. We know that natural and man-made disasters always disproportionately impact, vulnerable communities and communities of color. We knew this was coming. Our communities tend to be, in some areas densely populated, multi-generational housing, essential workers, people who had to, take public transportation at a very early time when the pandemic was really picking up. And so our communities were hit hard, they were hit early and devastated, in Boston, LA, Chicago, around the entire country. And, it's not because we were more genetically susceptible in any way, shape, or form, but we did enter the pandemic with a lot of disadvantages because, if you did have any of those chronic conditions and you did get COVID, you were going to do less well. And so that's been our reality. I've been fighting this since March of last year, leading our healthcare systems efforts on equity and community health related to COVID, and now leading our vaccine work. And again, I want to just thank Hannah so much. I mean, she really made me very emotional thinking about how much pain and suffering I saw. I'm so thankful for her sharing her story. I'm thankful for her commitment to make it better for other people. And this is the work we do. This is why we are here. This is why Hannah and I are taking time out of our evenings on a Sunday night so that everybody has the information to make the best choice possible. And this is a commitment that comes not from preaching, not from kind of, talking down to people. This comes from love. It comes from loving and caring for each other as fellow human beings, and certainly, hopefully, as a trusted messenger, as a person who has lived experience, I can share some things with folks that will make a difference and help them better understand to make the best decision for them. So I thank you for the kind introduction. And if you want, I'll go ahead and maybe talk about the vaccine for a little bit. And
Yes.
again, I really want to thank Hannah for opening this, because that's really the meaning of this is her story, her experience, her pain, her suffering, her kind of renaissance out of it, and what she's trying to do to help other people.
Yes. Yes. All right. You can go ahead and get
Okay.
started.
Okay, excellent. So let me just begin by saying a couple of quick things. I want to talk a bit about COVID. I want to talk a bit about the Delta variant, which we're all hearing about, and then I want to pivot into the vaccine. And I've been doing this work with the vaccine since December, talking to people in communities, talking to my patients, talking to anyone who will listen. And so I've learned a lot. I've got a strong sense of what the questions are and the types of concerns people may have. I will say the fundamental difference today versus when I was doing these talks in February or March was that I knew that we as people of color are and have a lot of reason, given our nation's history of racism, segregation, medical experimentation, have a lot of reason to be mistrustful, to not really trust healthcare providers or the healthcare system when they tell us things. And so that mistrust is well earned. And so, everything that I've tried to do is to try to give people information and build trust. And the big difference between today and in February, or even in kind of the fall when people of color were being asked to join clinical trials, and people were like, no, I don't want to be a part of any experiment. We really understood that. In March, I really, really understood when people were saying, you know what, I'm not opposed to the vaccine, but I just don't want to be first. So the good news is today, compared to when I was doing these talks in March, you are absolutely not first. We have learned so much about these vaccines. Hundreds of millions of people have been vaccinated. So what I'm telling you is not just, based on some ideas in my head, based on some small group of 10, 100, 10,000 patients. What I'm sharing with you is the experience of hundreds of millions of people and what we've learned. And so to talk about COVID quickly, COVID, as you may know, is just a virus that's in the family of the viruses of the common cold. But COVID is different. It's more aggressive. It attacks the lungs. We also know it can attack the blood vessels, kidneys, brain. So it's a kind of a common virus, but it's just a lot nastier. And it spreads more easily and it does more damage. And so this is what we were facing when the pandemic started. And ultimately, what we understand in science is that if you have a bacteria is different than a virus. If you have a bacteria like a strep throat, I could give you antibiotics that you could go pick up at your pharmacy, and that will help your body fight that bacteria, right? And that will help your body. The actual antibiotics will help kill the bacteria. Viruses are different. Our body needs to fight viruses because we don't have great medications to kill them. Oftentimes, the medications we can develop can just slow them down. HIV is a great example. We have great medications that will not cure you of HIV, but it will slow it down enough and bring the level down enough so that you can live a normal life and it will not impact you. We have a medication in case you get the flu. It's not going to get rid of the flu, but it will shorten the duration. And so with COVID, similarly, we, when it started, did not have a medication to eliminate this. And we've experimented, as Hannah said, and tried different things. And we have some things that work and we've been better, but we still don't have, kind of a silver bullet, something magic that if you get COVID, we can make it go away. So we have to treat you in what we say a supportive way, which is, help your body fight it, help prevent inflammation. And, it might even be putting you on a ventilator to help you breathe until your body is able to fight this. The other challenging things about COVID is that it is like Russian roulette. I have seen patients who've been in their 80s with chronic disease who've gotten COVID and have been fine. I have seen patients in their 20s, totally healthy, who've gotten COVID and who've ended up intubated or worse. So the challenge and the scary part about COVID is that you don't know how you're going to react when you get it. And again, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to give you information. And what we experience in the healthcare system is this fear of not knowing what it's going to be like if a patient gets it. When I had COVID in November, I was worried. I didn't know how I was going to experience it. I, thank God, experienced a lesser case, certainly than Hannah. And I had a lot of my patients who died, and I've had a lot of patients who survived it. But that is the challenge with COVID. So that brings us to a vaccine. With viruses, we have a long history of being able to slow down or eliminate viruses with something called a vaccine. Now, the vaccine is, this is not something new. And the beauty, if you look about, if you read about vaccinations, I'll talk more a bit about the science behind vaccination, but if you look about the science of vaccinations, you will find that one of the first kind of vaccines that was developed, not in a lab, but kind of just through experience, was developed by an enslaved man in the late 1700s as a way to address the smallpox virus that was really ripping apart New England. This slave, Onesimus, worked with the minister and worked with the doctor and said, I saw that there's this way where you take a smallpox, like a vesicle, almost like chickenpox, and you take a little bit of that stuff in there. And if you scratch it onto somebody else's skin, they'll get a reaction, but somehow, they seem to be protected against it. Why? Because the premise of a vaccine is that you take components of or a weakened virus, right? And you expose a healthy person to that. And in exposing a healthy person to that, you create soldiers that can then recognize that virus if you get it for real. And what those soldiers are able to do, what a vaccine does is it exposes you to either pieces or to a virus that's been so beat up it can't hurt you. Your body develops antibodies, or what I call soldiers, to fight it, so that now you're ready, you're geared up. So when you're exposed, now your body's going to be ready to fight it. So it's a simple principle. Now, we have used vaccines for hundreds of years. We have vaccines have helped us eliminate a lot of different diseases, including smallpox, including polio. So, vaccines aren't new. And I think that's one really important point I want to make. Now, we have the good fortune of having developed last year a COVID vaccine. Now, many people say, wow, that was developed fast, or we hear about this new technology, like why is that? Is that okay that this virus was developed? This vaccine was developed so fast. I'll say I got the COVID vaccine myself in January. There were a lot of concerns about how fast it was developed. And let me explain to you why it wasn't developed so fast. The science upon which the COVID vaccine was developed, which is a little different than previous vaccines, and I'm going to tell you the difference between the two of them. There's the Johnson & Johnson, which is one type, and then the Pfizer and Moderna, which is another type. But ultimately, the science that was used to develop, which, by the way, a Black woman scientist at the NIH is one of the key people who helped develop this, which we need to give that acknowledgement and shout out as well, that the science that had been used to develop this new type of vaccine had been in play for decades. They just hadn't fully launched it yet. And this was the opportunity to launch it, but it had been proven safe, it had been proven effective. And the beauty is that you could literally develop the vaccine fast. So what we were able to do with COVID very, very early on, thank God, very early on, once the pandemic started, we were able to capture it. We were able to identify these particles on the top, what they call spike proteins, which is the shell of it. And we were able to take that shell and say, okay, let's create a vaccine that would protect you against the shell of that virus, so that when you get that virus, you're ready to go and you're ready to kind of attack it, right? And so science allowed us, number one, to capture and map the coronavirus very early. Number two, it allowed us, once we identified the proteins, the parts of that outside shell of the vaccine, of the virus, to create a vaccine. And to move it quickly. Now, you may hear the term mRNA vaccine or DNA vaccine. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of vaccines, what they do is they capture viruses, they grind up the viruses and kill them, and like the flu shot, and they inject it into you, and then your body's able to recognize those kind of busted up pieces and be ready to fight the virus, right? Well, in this case, scientists said, we have an even quicker and better way to do it. We are going to inject a little map into the body. That map is going to go into a normal cell, and that cell is going to produce those pieces, those ground up pieces, so that our body can develop antibodies for them and be ready to fight the virus. Now, why is that different than the past? Because you're able to do it quicker. Your body becomes the engine. And if we would have done it the old way, it might have taken a year or two to develop a vaccine. But ultimately, this is a proven strategy. It's worked, it's fast, and it allows us to develop vaccines in more effective ways. And we hope that using this technology, we might be able to develop a flu shot that will just be once and you may never need one again. So I would say, yes, it was developed fast, but it was built on great science. Another question we get is, well, how are the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines different than the J&J? The Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine are approved for individuals 12 and over. We study these in time, and then we start to identify age groups. And Johnson & Johnson is done a little bit differently, but the Pfizer and the Moderna are mRNA vaccines, and the J&J vaccine, which is just one shot, Pfizer and Moderna are two. Moderna is split by 4 weeks, Pfizer is split by 3 weeks, but the J&J actually uses a virus that's been inactivated to deliver that map to your cells. So similar technology, but ultimately equally safe. Now, I'll just say about the J&J, we have heard that J&J has had a couple of things in the news about some complications. Look, the bottom line is that these complications are so rare that they make the news. Our surveillance system has done the right thing by identifying them. So we're seeing a lot more Pfizer and Moderna. They tend to have less of these even very rare complications. So I'd say when people say, what's the right vaccine to get? The right vaccine to get is the one that's available to you, although you will likely have more access to Pfizer, probably more than any other one, and then Moderna. I've had family members, my sister, who got Johnson & Johnson and did absolutely fine. All right. So, and again, they're slightly different. One's mRNA and the other one's DNA. Now, let's talk a bit about side effects. I got the vaccine, and basically the next day I felt a little bit tired. I got a little bit of a low-grade temp. I was, got a little bit of chills. And I'll tell you, I had it for part of the next day, and then it was gone. And there people worry about, well, will I get more side effects with the second one? Probably about the same. So you may get zero side effects, you may get some side effects, but here's the deal. The side effects are way less worse than the chance you take if you get COVID and you're unvaccinated. That is the reality. So you got to balance these things out. These side effects are really nothing compared to what COVID can do to you. So those are some basic side effects. People talk a lot about allergies. How about allergies? We will assess if you have any allergies. We watch you for 15 minutes afterwards. We've seen, less than 1 in a million allergic reactions that require medical attention. So again, what I'm sharing with you is not like something out of my head. We have millions and millions of people who've gotten this vaccine, and this is real data. So again, allergies, you'll be assessed for allergies, and the amount of significant allergic reactions we've seen have been very, very little. So some people say, well, can I just not get the vaccine and just stay healthy? Can I not get the vaccine? And if I do get COVID, just take some meds. Again, if you get COVID, you are taking a huge risk. Just truth, just facts. And the bottom line is that the only way that you will be protected is through the vaccine today. Now, maybe in a year, we'll develop some medicine that will slow it down like we've done with flu, with HIV, but we don't have that now. So the safest and best way for you to get on with your life, to be able to get back into church, get back into restaurants, be around people you love, is to get the vaccine and give yourself that layer of protection. That vaccine is the only protection right now. There's nothing else that can protect you. Now, we are studying the vaccines in kids under 12, and we think that maybe by the beginning of the year, we'll be ready to give vaccines under the age of, to kids under the age of 12. So right now, kids under the age of 12 are at risk, and we need to be careful with kids under the age of 12. My kids are 16, 18. They've both been vaccinated, and they both got Pfizer. They both did totally fine. Again, I've recommended it for myself, my family, and all my patients. And so we hope to be able to do younger kids, but that's coming down the pipe. Another question here is, well, I'm young and I'm healthy. Why should I get the vaccine? The majority of COVID spread that we're seeing today is among individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. This virus does not discriminate based on who you are. And so if you feel like you're good and you're in your 20s, again, the risk is still very significant. And I'm going to talk more about why that risk is even higher now with the Delta variant. People have asked about a booster. Do I need a booster? We do not know if you are going to need a booster. Right now, the only thing you need to do is get your 2 shots of Pfizer, 2 shots of Moderna, or 1 shot of J&J, and you know you will have protection. People ask about, well, what if I had a previous infection, like COVID, like I did, like Hannah did? Should we get vaccinated? Absolutely. The reason is that we are not 100% sure that that natural immunity is as strong. And a matter of fact, we're pretty sure that it's not as strong as getting the vaccine. The vaccine gives you even stronger immunity or stronger protection against COVID. So now I want to talk about today, and I want to talk about the Delta variant that you all are hearing about a lot. Now, as Hannah said, we have great disparities in where people are vaccinated. I've been working night and day, working my heart out to make sure that communities of color are vaccinated because, yes, there were big delays in supply in communities of color, which was an equity issue that we fought long and hard on. But now that equity issue of access to vaccine in our communities no longer exists. If you want the vaccine, you could pretty much guarantee that in this country, you can get it easily from the CVS, from your healthcare provider. There's so many ways for you to get it. That kept me up at night. The fact that I was worried that, as Hannah said, a lot of people with resources were getting vaccines. They were even coming to community clinics and communities of color to get them. And I was, and my community was hesitant. I'm like, look at who's lining up. That should tell you, like, don't be last. Don't be left behind. This is an opportunity for you to get it. So access is no longer an issue. But the challenge is now that we have a variant. Now, what is a variant? These viruses are smart. They adjust, they mutate. They don't want to die. They want to continue to live, right? So when you squash one, they kind of figure out a way to kind of, evolve and keep living. And that's what variants are. And the Delta variant is just the latest variant that is found a new way to reproduce. It is more contagious. It is more deadly. It is impacting younger people. And we are seeing another big peak in this country of COVID due to the Delta variant. I'm going to end right now by saying a couple of quick things. Yes, if you live in states like Louisiana, Arkansas, Alabama, Missouri, states, quite frankly, where this issue has been politicized unnecessarily, we see these pandemics, this epidemic really booming. And in all those states I mentioned, there are large communities of color. So, this is unfortunate because it's politicized and we have large communities of color, especially in the South. So we need to mobilize to share with our friends, family, no matter, young or old, to get vaccinated. Now, the good news is that the current vaccines provide great protection against the Delta variant. But right now, it is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The Delta variant is ripping apart people who are unvaccinated. And so if you are unvaccinated, you are at very high risk right now to be exposed to a more deadly and a more contagious variant of the virus. If you are vaccinated, you are protected. Now, big question I get. Well, why are we seeing that some people who are double vaccinated, have gotten their vaccine are still COVID positive with the Delta variant? That's okay. You know what? We're seeing people turn up positive, but they just have a couple of days of cold symptoms. They're not ending up hospitalized and they are not ending up dead, which means that the vaccine is doing its job. You could get the Delta variant, and yes, you could be positive, and you might get a little sick. That's still better than dying, which is what a lot of people may do if they don't get vaccinated and they get the Delta variant. This is the key message here. And yes, for kids, we want to kind of have them masked up if they're under 12. We want to have them around vaccinated people. And if they're not, then they need to mask up. And I would just say it probably just makes sense now. Absolutely, if you're vaccinated, to mask up. If you're unvaccinated, and even if you're vaccinated, like, look, I'm vaccinated. If I go into a supermarket here in New England, even in Boston, where we're 80% vaccinated, I'm still going to throw on a mask. Why? Because I don't want to be sick even for 3 to 5 days if I get the Delta variant, right? I know I'm not going to die and end up in the hospital. I don't even want to be sick. So just using good common sense is going to be helpful. So I'm happy to take some questions now. I hope this was helpful and really, really look forward to answering any questions you have. And again, my job is to give you information, to empower you, to address any fears and concerns, to understand that you're mistrustful. I'm not here to twist your arm, but I'm here to give you the information that I know in my heart and in my mind and through my experience can save your life. And that's why myself, Hannah, and Faith are here. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm happy to take some questions.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so informative. And even in the midst of everything that you talked about, you answered a lot of the questions that I have. And I know you answered a lot of the questions for our participants as well. So first and foremost, thank you so much, Dr. Bettencourt. So we're going to get into some questions. I guess we can start with the questions that are in the chat. So the first one is from Joy Dawkins, and they said, is it true someone who is not vaccinated can pass COVID to someone who has been vaccinated, and that vaccinated person can pass it to someone else?
Yes. Yes. So here's the deal. If we take the Delta variant out of the mix, Faith, right? Like beforehand, if I was vaccinated, if I'm vaccinated and I'm exposed to the regular COVID, my antibodies, my soldiers are going to kind of suppress that virus enough so that I can't spread it. And we were really excited about that. Now, so even if I was in a place and, let's say you weren't vaccinated, you gave me COVID, the old COVID, and I was vaccinated, small chance I may turn out positive, but the truth of the matter is my antibodies would be able to squash the virus before I even became positive. So what changes with the Delta virus? Delta virus is more contagious and the Delta virus is tougher. So if you, Faith, are unvaccinated and you get the Delta variant, you can give it to me. The vaccines are very effective against the Delta variant, but not as effective as against the original, right? They're still going to prevent you from being hospitalized, or they're going to prevent you from dying. But what they may not do is prevent me from building up enough virus to make me a little sick and to spread it to somebody else.
Got it.
So I could spread it to another unvaccinated person. I could spread it to another vaccinated person. The difference is if I give it to an unvaccinated person, they may die. If I give it to a vaccinated person, they may just have maybe positive like me.
Got it. Okay. And we have a second question from Joy Dawkins as well. Yep. She said, why do you need to get a vaccine if you already had COVID, which I think you touched on a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it's a great question. And people say, well, if I got it, I had it, Hannah had it, right? Like, I got the vaccine. What we do know is that natural immunity, like have the immunity you develop, these soldiers, the antibodies that you develop after you get COVID naturally, is not as good as the vaccine, because the vaccine, like, you, me, Hannah, let's say if we all got COVID, we might have gotten a slightly different variant that may not give us good enough immunity. The COVID that we captured, that we made the vaccine, it like tried to take all of them, right? Give us much, much better protection. And I would say even more so now with the Delta variant, like, if you got COVID, you probably have immunity to the standard, the original one, not to Delta. And the vaccine is going to give you better protection against Delta versus the natural immunity that you may have had if you got it.
Got it. Okay. These are really great explanations.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Faith Shamley. So the first one is, if we've gone 18 months without the vaccine and the possibility of having COVID once or twice and recovered with little to no medication, why would we need the vaccine?
Yep. So the point here, Faith, is you do not know, we do not know how you will react to getting COVID, right? So if let's say you've been through it, and let's say you've gotten it once, you've gotten it twice, or you haven't gotten it. Why do you need a vaccine now? You're all, in your mind, you're almost done. Maybe you're even living in a place like I am, where we have a very high vaccination rate, and our numbers are growing just like they're growing in all 50 states, right? But they are growing, that's a fact. The bottom line is that these vaccines will protect you just in general. And more importantly, Faith, now than ever before, this Delta variant's nastier. It's more contagious. It's deadlier. So if you've been like, man, I skated through here, I'm good. Like, let everybody else get vaccinated. I'm going to get to the finish line here without needing it. You are putting yourself at unnecessary risk. COVID is now a preventable condition where it wasn't in the past. So please, even if you've been like, I'm good, you are still taking a risk. If you get it, you're going to be extra good, and you're going to feel that sense of comfort that now, even if, God forbid, you're exposed to the Delta, you're going to be okay.
Got it. Okay, awesome. And the second question for Rick Shamley. So you might have to go into the chat and read some of the words that he put in here. I'm probably going to mispronounce them, but they're really long words. Are you familiar with alpha interferon and Paximune used in Cuba and China and other Asian countries that's helping to reduce their numbers of COVID cases and deaths?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with them. What we have developed, and actually this has been done for a while, is we are able to we've created like a serum that you could get infused for certain people who get COVID that help build up your antibodies, right, and help you fight it. And that's probably what these are like.
Mm-hmm.
What they did, Faith, was they from people who had gotten COVID, they kind of take their antibodies. And so, for example, I'm going to go back a couple of months, Faith. If you got COVID, God forbid, before the vaccine, we could give you this, and
Mm-hmm.
that would give you some antibodies just to help you. The truth of the matter is, we don't need those things anymore, hopefully, if people just get vaccinated, because you'll develop your own. We won't need to give you some kind of other cocktail of other. Now, if you are not vaccinated and you get COVID, we have something similar to give to you. Now, you have to meet certain criteria, and we have steroids we could give to prevent some inflammation of the lungs. Remdesivir, which has been shown to be moderately effective. We have some things, but that's probably what these are. And again, why do that if you could just make your own, right? You get the vaccine, you don't need these things.
Got it.
And so, I don't think it's really probably reducing cases. It may be reducing deaths because if you get it, this will help you recover. But it's probably not reducing cases because that's not what it's meant to do.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So we have a question from Tiffany G. They asked, I live in Louisiana. I'm a young adult woman of color. How can I share this information to my community?
Yeah, I think we're recording this, right? So maybe this would be something that's accessible. There's a lot of people like us around the country, on social media, on YouTube, our website, the Disparity Solution Center website, we have a bunch of videos of doctors talking about this, Black, brown, different languages, So I think we need to share, this information from trusted messengers, people who care, who have the knowledge, right? And so I would say, Tiffany, if you look around, there's a lot of great resources, but just make sure it's somebody who's informed. I mean, we've had a lot of misinformation out there, and you want to make sure it's a credible source and a trusted messenger. Certainly, hopefully, if this is recorded, you can share this with your community as well.
Yep, and it is recorded, so
Cool.
yes, we will definitely be able to share this with as many people as we would like.
Great.
Okay, so we have a question from Celie Blair. Why is government/CDC promoting use of masks not required if fully vaccinated?
Yeah, so this is been a little bit like, controversial and problematic because the CDC early on said, if you're vaccinated, you need no masks. And I think that's a good strategy in places where there are high vaccination rates and places where there are low vaccination rates, probably less effective, right? And certainly now with Delta, I think you got to use common sense. If you're in one of those places that are really on fire right now, Florida, some of the states that we talked about, like masking up just makes sense. It's just another layer of protection, even if you are vaccinated, and certainly if you're unvaccinated.
Yeah.
So I think some of this, Faith, is common sense. Like if you're in a place that has high infection rate, anything you can do to protect yourself is just going to be the right thing. And masks give you a little bit more protection. And I'll tell you though, the Delta is scary because masks will give you protection, but it's very, very, very contagious. And so masks at least give you a fighting chance. And so I'd say that what really should happen is a local assessment. What's the infection rate like in your area? That should drive your decision around masks. And yes, masks are good, and masks will give you a layer of protection. Vaccinated, great, and unvaccinated, absolutely necessary.
Got it. Okay. And we have a question, another question from someone offline. So if a woman is interested in having a baby and is hesitant about getting the vaccine, what can you share that would give peace of mind if it's safe? And is it safe if you plan on getting pregnant?
Yes. So Faith, this has been a gigantic question from early times, from February, right? And at that time, we were saying, we believe it is safe. At that time, we had women who were pregnant who were getting it because they believed in kind of the science that they read and understood. This is what we understand now. It is safe. The COVID vaccine does not make you, infertile. That's one. I want to be clear, men and women, because that was, a thing that we started here, number one. Number two, if you are pregnant, you should absolutely get the vaccine. And we believe it will give some protection to your unborn child or newborn child as well. The safety profile is excellent. And so I'd say all the more reason to get vaccinated if you're pregnant, because, it's not just you're looking after, you're looking after your unborn or newborn child. So I would say absolutely, and the benefit now is that there's plenty of information I think you could find online about this and about how safe it is among pregnant and lactating women.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
So question from Celie, is COVID-19 having a season similar to the flu season?
That's a great question. So we absolutely know that there are certain times of the year where we tend to be more in certain spaces, right? Like in the colder months, like especially in places that get cold, where these viruses get transmitted a lot more. And just like we've seen with COVID, if there's a flu virus that's busting around in cold places, it's going to make it to the warm places too. That's just reality as well. And so we absolutely, if you think about when we had when COVID came out, we had a peak in the spring, and then another big peak in the fall again when those conditions and winter started to come together. And we were hoping and we were anticipating that we might have another peak in the fall. We have an early peak now with the Delta. So there's some places where COVID season never ended. And so, is it going to be seasonal? Anything that brings people together, and that is seasonal in nature, right? Depending on being cold outside and people need to go indoors and be in more indoor spaces, or even in hot places where people want to be inside in air conditioning in malls or other places. Anything that brings people together makes it more risky. And that's the seasonal variation here that we're seeing.
Okay, got it. We have a couple more questions.
Okay.
And I'll combine two questions that I have because they're kind of similar.
Okay.
So Lori Campbell asked, I have heard it's good to take B12 and vitamin D. Can these vitamins help assist in boosting the immune system and protect the lungs? And someone also asked, many people boost their immune system with vitamin, zinc, and natural holistic methods. Would you endorse those methods as equal to or less efficient as a vaccine?
Absolutely less efficient than a vaccine, no doubt. So I want to take that question right off the table. Anything you could do to boost your immune system is nowhere near what the vaccine provides. Vaccine provides targeted protection, boosting your immune system. Great, you boost your immune system. When you get COVID, if your body hasn't seen it, you're still starting from scratch and building your antibodies. And if the COVID outraces your ability to build the antibodies in the soldiers, then that's where you get in trouble, right? Even with a strong and beautifully boosted immune system. Now, when I got COVID, what did I do? I took vitamin C, I took zinc, yes, because I wanted my immune system to be strong. So I would say that anything we could do at any time to boost our immune system is a good thing. Boosting your immune system will not protect you from getting COVID. It will not really assure in any way that you won't get serious COVID. It's still unknown. So vaccine is over here. Doing good things to boost your immune system are over here. And if you get COVID, doing things to boost your immune system can be great. I did it, but those are apples and oranges.
Okay, got it. So someone asked about nitric oxide. They heard nitric oxide helps prevent COVID, and I guess that's along the same question. So
yep, not to prevent COVID. We tried nitric oxide. It was not found to be helpful.
Got it.
And that was in people who are hospitalized. Nitric oxide, what it does is it expands your blood vessels and we thought the lung vessels. We thought it would help you do more with a little bit of air in your lungs. That's the principle. Inhaled nitric oxide would maybe make your lungs, not fight the congestion, but COVID makes your lungs very waterlogged and really kind of full of water and inflammation. So you can't exchange oxygen well. When you take a breath, you get short of breath. We got to intubate you, right? Really, really bad. So what we thought was that if we gave you nitric oxide, it might expand the lung capacity, and it really didn't end up being, incredibly effective. And so it certainly doesn't prevent COVID, and as treatment of COVID, it didn't really prove out.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And so we're gonna go with the last two questions.
Okay.
Mimi asked, do I still have to social distance from people who cannot get the vaccine?
I think that anybody who's unvaccinated, especially in a place with high rates of COVID or just in general, is a risky person.
Got it.
That's just a fact. And I think
Mhm.
that, put it this way, if I am with, unvaccinated people, I'm going to try to be careful, especially now with the Delta going around, because, they pose a threat. They pose a risk. That's just the truth. And especially they pose a risk if you're around, if you have unvaccinated people around kids who are, under 12 and not vaccinated, who can't get
Mhm.
vaccinated, so that's another risk. That's just, yeah, that's the truth. So I think, yes, it's not about kind of alienating people, but by the same token, you have to understand your risks. And somebody's unvaccinated today with the numbers going up, that poses a risk.
Okay, got it. And this is a good question to wrap up. So the vaccine has caused allergic reactions in multiple people. Some cases result in death. What assurance or justification can you give towards the COVID-19 vaccine?
So let me be clear, Faith, there we have vaccinated, probably hundreds of millions of people now. The rate of any kind of severe allergic reaction is like less than 1 in a million.
Got it.
The amount of deaths has been like, you probably got a better chance of certainly got a better chance of getting in a car accident, certainly got a better chance of a lot of bad things in our day-to-day life than you would have of getting a fatal allergic reaction to the COVID vaccine. That is why, Faith, if you get the vaccine, I will watch you for 15 minutes. And if you
Mhm.
show any signs of allergic reaction, I have all the tools to prevent that allergic reaction from being severe. Are there always going to be, when you do things with millions of people, exceptions to the rule? Absolutely. I can't talk about what pre-existing conditions those people had. I
Right.
don't have all the information, but it is a bit of a numbers game. But I will say that I personally, am not aware in our system of any deaths due to allergic reaction to the COVID vaccine. And so that's when you hear these things
Mhm.
that are really bad, you need to say, okay, how often do they happen? And if they're like super, 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 that's like if it's like getting hit by lightning. Well, you walk in the street, you get hit by lightning, you get hit by a car. I mean, if the chances are even less of something bad happening with the COVID vaccine than something common in your life, then you got to put that into perspective.
Got it. That's super reassuring. Okay. All right. Well, those are all the questions that we have for tonight.
Okay.
And just thank you so, so much for coming on here tonight. This was amazing. Thank you for answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
I know that our community is super informed and a lot more empowered now with this information. So do you have any final words that you would like to share?
Yeah, I want to express my thanks to you, Faith, to Reach Worldwide, to Hannah, for organizing this. We are here in service of each other and of all you, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here. Hopefully, I've given you some information, and if you're still a little hesitant, hopefully, I answered some questions that bring you a little closer to doing it. I gain nothing except knowing that less people are going to die or get sick by sharing this information with you, right? I share it
Yeah.
because I don't want you to get sick. I don't want you to die. We've lost too many people in our communities already, and I
Yep.
just don't want to see it anymore. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, of course. And thank you again. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So this has just been such an amazing night of education. And Dr. Bettencourt mentioned something when he first began to speak about how this whole event and everything that we do is purely based on love, which I believe is just so powerful. We do this because we love our communities and we love others, and we want others to live and be empowered with this information. And so I'm just full of joy that this is all of out of love, and I just believe that's so powerful that we are really getting on to be informed so that we can make the best decisions for ourselves and for our families, our community. And it's just been a really, really great night of education. So a special thank you to our guests, Hannah, Naomi Jones, and Dr. Bettencourt. You all were amazing, so powerful. Thank you as well to Faith Shamley, my mother, for organizing this event. And also thank you to Shamika McCoy for the work you have done behind the scenes on this event as well. And lastly, a huge thank you to CVS for sponsoring this event. This has been amazing. I know I would not have been able to do this without this partnership. So thank you, thank you, thank you to CVS. And I would just like to share the final reminder that you can go to your local CVS pharmacy to find out more information about the COVID-19 vaccine. And also thank you everyone for joining us tonight to get educated. You all could be doing everything else with your evening and you chose to be here. So thank you all so much. Please share this replay with your loved ones, with your friends, with those that you know, so that they can get educated as well. I hope you walk away feeling empowered and informed, and have a great rest of your evening, everyone. All right.